Now that we have our footage items in our project, we should explore the footage items a little bit more. So I'm going to double click on the folder called footage, and you'll see that it comes up with the bin footage window here that kind of floats. Now the reason I'm bringing this up is just to show you that there's a lot of metadata that can go with these. And you can create metadata for them or use the existing one. So the existing data right now tells me the frame rate or the type of audio that I've got, which is 44 instead of 48 kilohertz. It tells me the length of it. This is 34 seconds. That's a minute and 5 seconds. And it might show me some other things. But I can also add things such as I can click on the good icon over here just to say, ooh, I really like that. And so it's basically made for you to be able to um, add a lot of information. You can even see with this one right here, it actually has some metadata that came in with that particular um, file, such as the fact that this was using a digital camera. This used a Digimax 360 camera. It'll also show you whether or not your footage is online or not, and show you certain capture settings that you might have used. So that's kind of nice just to be aware that you can go and take a look at some of that other footage um, information. But here is actually what might be even more important. If I go ahead and find a photo, you'll see that that photo has some information that appears in the top of my project bin. It includes the fact that it's a still image, the 1024 by 768, and it tells me that it's using square pixels, and that it has an alpha channel, and that it's 5 seconds long. If I drag this over into or let's just double click on it, it'll come over in my source window here. Then you'll notice nothing has changed until I drag this down to my actual project. As soon as I put it in my project sequence, you'll notice that this actually will change so that it now shows me that this particular file is being used one time. If I move over just a little bit, it says video used one time, and it actually shows me where, and if I click on it, it will jump to that file in a timeline. So it's kind of a nice thing to help you keep track of what's going on. Um, so anyway, when you double click on an item, you'll notice that it appears over here in my source window. The source window is the incoming source files that I'll be using on my timeline. In order to get something from the source window to the timeline, all I have to do is click and drag and move it down. Now, I can also be aware of where my timeline indicator is currently. That's this blue indicator. And as you drag it around, always hold down the Shift key to make sure it snaps to the beginning or end of existing clips. Anyway, to move another footage item onto the timeline, I can also use some of the buttons that are here, such as Insert or Overlay. And we'll talk about those later. Insert will insert it between two existing clips, or Overlay might write over to existing clips. So you do want to be aware of the differences. You can always just click and drag as well, which is what I typically do anyway. Anyway, notice how the view in my source window is so different than my program window. And the reason why, my program window is actually what it's going to look like in my 16 by 9 view, and this is what the whole footage item looks like. So you do need to be aware of that discrepancy. You'll notice some of these images are pretty big, and so I can't even see the whole image in my program view. Now in your program view, you'll notice that there's some things that you want to be able to understand, such as what I'm currently looking at, which is the timeline of my program. You'll see I can click and drag on the blue timeline indicator either in my timeline or in my sequence window, and it will, or program window, and it will change the information both places. You'll see that timeline indicator move. Shows me what my current time is here, and I can click and drag on that as well. It shows me what the end time for my sequence is, which right now is not really applicable to this project. It has some other things such as setting in points, setting out points. We'll be doing that more when we actually have footage. We can set unnumbered markers if we want to keep track of a particular spot for any particular reason. If I zoom in a little bit, you'll see there's that marker we just made, and we can give that marker a name if we want to, but it's not really going to do much good for us right now. So I can clear that marker if I want to. We have the ability to go to previous edit points and next edit points. Let me zoom out just a little bit. You'll see that that will jump forward and backward a little bit. I can also go forward and backward one frame, and that's pretty easy. Now we can also scrub. Now you're not going to be able to see this really easily, but you can see the timeline indicator moving. If I had some audio in here, you'll actually be able to tell a little bit better. So I just moved that in here, but it jumped all the way down to the bottom because it is not a stereo track, it's a mono track. So it had to make a new track for me called Audio 4. So anyway, as I scrub, you'll see it scrubbing back and forth in fast motion or kind of slow motion, depending on how you work with it. Now the scrub bar that's underneath it pretty much does it in one frame increments. So it gives you a little bit more control, fine-tuned control for moving. And this one's a little faster. The next controls we have here are looping and turning on our safe margins so we can see what's action safe and what's title safe. We'll use those later. We also have what output we want to see. If we want to see our alpha, our vector scope, which are the colors that we have in this particular video, our YC waveform, our YCRCB waveform, which shows that we have a lot of black and whites in this image with a little bit of color here, and a little bit of showing multiple things at once. So we probably won't use those much. We'll use the composite video almost all the time. Now we also have this, which allows us to zoom in and out of our footage a little bit. And we can also use the plus and minus, I believe. Actually, that's not going to use it. Oh, somewhere we can change the size here. It's typically going to be on fit because that will actually change as you scale. But I like to often go to like the 50% just so I can see the outside edges easily. And if I have an image that's a lot larger, like this image is, you'll be able to see the outer boundaries of that image. And that's going to be important. So often I'll even take this program window and drag it over to the right-hand screen so it can be much, much larger while I'm working. One of the other things that you're going to see that's really important is your effects controls window. So I made that larger. And the reason why is because I want to be able to scale down this image. So if I go to my effects control window and open up the motion, you'll see it shows me properties about the current object that I have selected. Notice that that object is black down here, or has the darker view. So as you click on the different objects or video sources here, you'll notice that your effects controls will change. And the effect that I want right now is this particular item. So I'm going to go ahead and scale this down just a little bit. And you'll see as I scale it here, it shows the same thing over in the window. Now, be aware that clicking on it versus clicking on it here does show a different item. I don't typically suggest scaling things manually this way, although it does work. You just have to be aware that sometimes it can screw up your file a little bit, or it can be a little interesting to work. And I guess the biggest thing is if you have uniform scale turned off, that's really something you don't want to do. So that's why uniform scale on does allow you to scale this, and it works pretty well. But be aware that you're not seeing the best quality or the largest view. So that will hopefully give you just a little bit of idea about where you are in the interface and what's going on. Of course, there are other things to talk about that you'll see later using the effects and other windows. Always, you're welcome to take a look at all the different windows that are out here, lots of different ones, and you'll explore some of those as we go through the tutorials. And of course, there are different workspaces for audio editing. There's the audio mixer. The source control might show me audio if I actually double clicked on an audio file. And then maybe some other audio settings around there. Here's info about my audio, possibly. So you just have to work with the different workspaces and see what feels comfortable to you. Typically, the one that you'll see is going to be the editing workspace because that's our most common view. And let's go on to the next tutorial.